Well, breaking news today. Two federal judges stepped in to stop what Democrats and Republicans have called Donald Trump's slush fund. Earlier today, a federal judge temporarily blocked the fund after a lawsuit filed by a former January 6th federal prosecutor and others. And tonight, a huge development. The federal judge in Miami, who was actually overseeing Donald Trump's lawsuit against the IRS, which ultimately, in theory, led to the slush fund, is now investigating whether Donald Trump abused the court system with his $1.776 billion settlement, and I use that word in quotes, of that lawsuit, since Donald Trump has authority over the IRS as president. The U.S. District Judge, Kathleen Williams, has ordered Donald Trump's attorneys to respond by June 12th to, quote, 1, the charges of collusion and whether the parties, Trump and the IRS, are truly adverse. And number 2, the assertion that the dismissal in this case was premised on deception by the parties. And number 3, the question of whether the case should be reopened because the court was the, quote, victim of a fraud, end quote. Because the court was a, quote, victim of a fraud. I get it. We're numb to this stuff. But think about this for a second. A federal court alleging that it could be the victim of a fraud by the sitting American president with alleged collusion between the Treasury, the bank where America keeps your money, and the Justice Department, now led by Donald Trump's former criminal defense attorney and working wholesale for Donald Trump. This whole thing has got some end-stage regime vibes to it. Today, Donald Trump's former Attorney General, Pam Bondi, appeared before the House Oversight Committee in its Epstein investigation. Her testimony was originally scheduled to be on camera and under oath. But after Donald Trump fired Pam Bondi, House Republicans changed the terms. Pam Bondi appeared today not under oath, not on camera, not in public view. Our first guest tonight, Congressman Robert Garcia, the top Democrat on the Oversight Committee, emerged from the closed-door hearings and said this.
I also personally asked the former AG 5 times and 5 different questions about her conversations with President Trump, whether he directed her at any given time on the Epstein files, what he knew, what he asked her to redact or not, and she refused to answer any questions about President Trump. In fact, she said that she would not speak or respond to any questions that had anything to do with President Trump.
Worth noting, by the way, that she, too, was Donald Trump's personal attorney. Congressman Garcia made it clear that what happened today was Pam Bondi's attempt to avoid accountability. She blamed the now acting attorney general and also Donald Trump's former criminal defense lawyer, Todd Blanche, for the handling of the Epstein files. Quote, I delegated oversight over this process to Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, end quote. House Democrats say they're going to continue to seek the truth.
Justice doesn't have a time limit. And no matter how much Comer or Bondi or Blanche or Trump or whoever else fights back against the truth coming out, that this fight will continue, that we will not relent.
In other words, this is a preview of what's to come if America does the right thing in November, and current polling says they will, and votes for some checks on this administration. This is what the future will be. This is the beginning of what it looks like for the people who have helped Donald Trump's criminalization of the government. The Trump Republicans, who have spent several years operating with impunity, could soon find themselves facing real oversight if Democrats win the gavel. Subpoenas, public hearings, sworn testimony under oath, recorded proceedings, real investigations, not protection, but accountability. And that distinction really matters. One of the defining features of this Trump era has been the normalization of conduct that in any previous administration would have triggered immediate scandal, investigation, and probably resignation. Instead, what we have seen is a one-party ecosystem that insulates powerful people from scrutiny, and Republicans controlling Congress have effectively created a safe space for a former Trump official facing serious questions. Congressman Robert Garcia could be the chairman of the Oversight Committee after the midterms, and use the power of the gavel to enforce subpoenas and hold Trump allies accountable. And this is not about one Trump official or one Trump policy. It's about whether the United States government is still constrained by law, whether Congress still controls spending as the Constitution demands, whether presidents are still accountable. M. Gesson writes in the New York Times about the lessons America can learn from the stunning defeat of the Trump hero, the autocrat Viktor Orban in Hungary. Quote, previous opposition politicians had described Orban's regime as corrupt, a relatively mild term suggesting some aberration from the government's intended function. Peter Magyar made no such accommodation. He has called it a mafia state, a fundamentally criminal enterprise. The lesson? Don't mince words, end quote. Don't mince words about a mafia state, a fundamentally criminal enterprise. And we're talking about Democratic senators like Sheldon Whitehouse already warning Trump administration officials to preserve any documents about this Donald Trump 1776 slush fund. Accountability is coming for the slush fund, for the pardons for January 6th rioters who assaulted police officers, and for other criminals, for using the Department of Justice and government power to shield allies and punish and menace Trump critics, even private citizens like E. Jean Carroll, for Trump taking a bulldozer to the historic White House that does not belong to him. Speaking of end-stage regime vibes, all the posters of Trump's face currently hanging off of government buildings, the tacky gold stick-ons, all the Trump graffiti on the Capitol, those will all be gone too. Starting tonight with the Kennedy Center. Just the Kennedy Center. Today, a federal judge gave Donald Trump 14 days to take his name off of Washington's Marquis Arts Center. The judge's message was simple. Congress named it for President Kennedy, and only Congress can rename it. The Kennedy Center belongs to the American people, not to Donald Trump. And come November, we may be in for a reminder that the American government also belongs to the American people. Leading off our discussion tonight is Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia of California. He serves as the ranking member of the Oversight Committee. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you for being with us.
Sure thing.
Ostensibly, we were going to talk to you, and I will, about Pam Bondi's testimony and the continuation of the Epstein investigation, which you are so central to. But today feels different. It feels like a lot of things have happened. While Pam Bondi sort of escaped some degree of accountability, what you and your colleagues said is that she will not in the end. And if voters do what we expect them to do in November, none of them will be able, none of these enablers will escape accountability. They will have to testify under oath.
That's exactly right. I mean, look, today was actually a monumental day for justice and for setting things right. I mean, obviously you have these judges coming out so strongly, pushing back on the Kennedy Center, just the desecration of what Trump tried to do there, pushing back on the slush fund to enrich himself, January 6ers and election deniers, stealing from the taxpayer so that he could essentially enrich his friends and his buddies and his family even more. And of course, with the Epstein investigation, we had Pam Bondi come before us. We asked tough questions. It was clear once again that she is part of this broader White House cover-up. I asked her 5 times about Donald Trump, multiple questions. She refused to answer, but she did very clearly point all arrows towards Todd Blanche. And so I think it's really important at this moment for us to understand that Todd Blanche is a key target for us to investigate, to ask questions, and he must be in front of our committee.
So everything about the story is unbelievable, right? If you wrote this story and submitted it for a movie or a TV show, they'd laugh you out. Todd Blanche, Pam Bondi have both represented Donald Trump. The obligation to represent a client never, ever ends. And to my surprise, Todd Blanche is acting more like that guy than less. He didn't seem to take the lesson of Pam Bondi being removed from office. So on one hand, his defense of Donald Trump is yet stronger. On the other hand, Pam Bondi seemed to throw him under the bus today.
That's exactly right. I mean, there's a couple things that are just really incredible here that's going on right now. I mean, one, you have Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's former personal lawyer. I would argue he continues to be his personal lawyer,
Yes.
acting as the attorney general. He's out there managing the Epstein investigation. He's out there clearly covering up for the president, doing God knows what, giving Ghislaine Maxwell special treatment, putting her in a less secure prison. And this entire time, Pam Bondi, of course, is at the top of the DOJ. And according to her, she had no knowledge of the transfer. We should ask Todd Blanche. She had no knowledge of the redaction process of the Epstein files. We should ask Todd Blanche.
You didn't just fall off the turnip truck, right? How is that possible? How is that possible that one of the most notorious sex offenders in the country got moved and somehow that didn't make it from the deputy attorney general to the attorney general?
Well, not only was it insane in the way she answered these questions, but I actually asked her about the Ghislaine Maxwell transfer. And she, on the record, which I'm looking forward to the transcript being released by Republicans, on the record, she basically said that she felt the transfer, that there wasn't actually a difference from one prison to the other, that it was comparable. And I reminded her that the Bureau of Prisons has 4 levels of prisons and facilities, and she was actually downgraded to the lowest level, and that is BOP, the prison system guideline. She was downgraded. Right. She had no idea. She didn't know about the transfer. She wouldn't admit to it, and she again pointed to Todd Blanche. And so it is crazy that even during today, by the way, she has a DOJ attorney sitting next to her, a very high-ranking DOJ attorney. It's basically telling her when to answer, when not to answer, whispering in her ear, saying don't talk about Donald Trump, saying we're not going to answer that question. And so what's it going to be? I mean, Pam Bondi wants to point the finger at Todd Blanche, or is she going to actually take some responsibility and actually tell us the truth? And had Comer decided to put her under oath and videotaped it, we would have gotten a lot further with the questions.
Well, maybe we'll get that chance after November's election and January's new Congress. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you for being with us. Congressman Robert Garcia is the ranking member of the Oversight Committee.